Let me ask you a simple question. What are your eyes fixed on right now? Because whether you realize it or not, what you focus on is shaping your future. In a world chasing what fades, this message is an invitation to lift your eyes and fix them on what will last forever.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, let me start by asking you a question. What are you chasing? Because whether you realize it or not, your focus determines your future. Every one of us has eyes fixed on something. Some are fixed on success, some on money, some on recognition, some on relationships. But here's the truth. Most of what we chase fades, fails, or falls apart. And that's why today, I want to challenge you with this word. Fix your eyes on what will last forever. We live in a world that thrives on the temporary. The trends change overnight, possessions depreciate, and even people disappoint. What looks shiny today can rust tomorrow. But eternity never loses its value. When you anchor your focus on eternal things, things that outlast this world, you start living with purpose, with peace, and with power. One of the greatest struggles we face in life is learning how to keep our focus on what truly matters. The truth is that distractions are everywhere, pulling at us from every direction, and most of them look good on the surface. Success, recognition, possessions, career goals, or even relationships. All of these are things we can spend our whole lives chasing. But if we're honest, much of what consumes our time and energy today won't hold any weight in the long run. The applause of people fades quickly, money loses its value, and achievements that seem so important today are often forgotten tomorrow. That's why we must guard our hearts against being distracted by what won't last. The real test is to ask ourselves a simple but powerful question. Will this matter 100 years from now? Will this count in eternity? The danger of living for temporary things is that they give us a false sense of fulfillment. When we achieve them, there's a burst of excitement, but the satisfaction doesn't last. It's like chasing a shadow. You may think you've caught it, but the moment you open your hand, you realize there's nothing there. This constant cycle of striving leaves us tired, restless, and still searching for meaning. Distractions are subtle. They don't always look like bad things. In fact, many of them can be good in their right place. But the moment they become the ultimate thing, the center of our focus, they begin to rob us of the greater purpose we were meant to live for. Think of it like driving a car. If your eyes are glued to the billboards on the side of the road, instead of on where you're going, you're bound to crash. The same is true in life. When your eyes are fixed on things that don't matter in eternity, you run the risk of losing direction, wasting time, and living a life that feels full but ends up empty. We all only get one life, and it's too short to be spent running after things that don't carry eternal weight. An excellent example of this can be seen in the story of a young man who spent years working tirelessly to climb the corporate ladder. He sacrificed time with family, neglected his health, and even set aside his faith. just so he could secure promotions, recognition, and a bigger paycheck. To everyone else, he looked successful, admired, and unstoppable. But years later, when he finally reached the top, he found himself empty, disconnected, and spiritually dry. The applause had faded, the achievements felt hollow, and the relationships he neglected were no longer there to support him. What he thought would bring fulfillment ended up leaving him with regret. It wasn't that his career was wrong, but he let the pursuit of it distract him from what truly mattered. Had he balanced his ambition with eternal values, loving people, nurturing his faith, and investing in relationships, he could have experienced real fulfillment alongside success. This is why we must constantly refocus our lives. Every distraction, no matter how appealing, must be measured by whether or not it will last. When we live with eternity in mind, we begin to make different choices. We learn to spend less time obsessing over things that won't last and more time building things that will. Joy, faith, love, kindness, and service. These are things that echo forever. If we don't intentionally guard our hearts, distractions will creep in and steal our focus without us even noticing. But when we fix our eyes on what is eternal, we find clarity, peace, and purpose that no temporary success can ever provide. So don't be deceived by the glitter of things that won't last. They may shine for a moment, but they won't carry you into eternity. Choose instead to keep your focus on what endures. When you live this way, you'll never look back with regret, because you'll know you invested in what matters most. To live a life of meaning and impact, we must learn to invest in what is eternal. Everything we have, our time, our talents, our resources, our energy, are like seeds. And just as with farming, the harvest we reap depends on where and how we plant those seeds. If we pour all of our energy into things that only satisfy the moment, then what we receive will also be temporary. The rewards might look impressive for a while, but eventually they fade. Wealth can be lost, status can be stripped, and even the greatest human achievements can be forgotten with time. But when we choose to plant our lives in eternal soil, through faith, love, service, and advancing God's purposes, we create a legacy that nothing and no one can erase. Eternal investments are never wasted because their returns outlast this world. One of the most profound truths about investing in eternal things is that it requires a shift in perspective. The world teaches us to store up possessions, chase recognition, and build comfort. But eternity teaches us that life is not measured by what we keep, but by what we give away. It's not about how much we accumulate for ourselves, but how much we invest in others and in the purposes that will never fade. This is why love, kindness, sacrifice, and faithfulness are considered eternal treasures. They ripple beyond our lifetime, touching hearts, shaping futures, and echoing into eternity. To invest in the eternal is not about ignoring the present or neglecting responsibilities, but about reordering our priorities. It means asking ourselves hard questions. Am I spending my time only on what benefits me now? Or am I building something that will outlast me? Am I using my resources just for personal comfort? Or am I sowing them into the lives of others, into causes that matter, into things that bring glory beyond this life? When we look at our lives this way, every decision becomes more significant because each one carries the potential to reach into forever. A simple but powerful example of this truth can be seen in the story of a woman named Sarah. She wasn't wealthy, influential, or widely known. She lived a quiet life, raising her children and working an ordinary job. But Sarah made a choice to invest her life in eternal soil. Instead of chasing recognition or material gain, she spent her evenings mentoring troubled teenagers in her community. She offered them meals, encouragement, and wisdom. Some nights she gave her last bit of money to help them buy books for school or to cover a bus ticket to an interview. She prayed with them, listened to their struggles, and never stopped believing in them. Years passed, and Sarah's health declined. But at her funeral, hundreds of young men and women stood up to testify about how her love, her time, and her faith had changed their lives. Many of them had become leaders, parents, teachers, and servants in their own communities because Sarah had invested in them. She may not have been rich by worldly standards, but her eternal portfolio was overflowing. The seeds she planted in love and service bore fruit that multiplied long after her earthly life ended. That is what it means to invest in the eternal. You may never see the full harvest in your lifetime, but eternity will reveal the impact of every seed you sow. The acts of kindness that seem small, the sacrifices nobody notices, the faith you live out quietly. All of these become eternal treasures, stored up where nothing can destroy them. When you choose to invest in what lasts forever, you ensure that your life was not just lived, but that it counted. Life is full of storms, and no one is immune to them. There will always be moments when disappointment strikes, when the unexpected happens, and when challenges weigh us down to the point that it feels almost impossible to move forward. In those moments, the natural reaction is to fix our eyes on the problem itself. We stare at the chaos, the loss, or the heartbreak, and the more we focus on it, the bigger it seems. But when all our attention is locked onto the storm, we begin to sink under the weight of fear, doubt, and despair. This is why it is so crucial to keep our vision heavenward. When we lift our gaze above the storm, we remind ourselves that there is a greater reality beyond what we can see, and that this moment, no matter how painful, is not the entire story of our lives. Fixing your vision heavenward does not mean ignoring the problems you face or pretending they don't exist. Rather, it is about gaining perspective. A storm may rage for a while, but storms are temporary, they pass. Heaven, on the other hand, is permanent, unshakable, and eternal. When you keep your eyes lifted, You anchor yourself in something greater than the temporary trial. That perspective brings hope, strength, and courage to endure, because you realize you are not defined by what you are going through. You are defined by where you are headed. The truth is that we cannot always control what comes against us, but we can control where we fix our eyes. If our focus is only on the pain, then pain will dominate our spirit. If our focus is on loss, then loss will steal our hope. But if our focus is on the eternal, we gain the ability to stand even when life shakes us. We realize that setbacks can be setups, and trials can become testimonies when seen through the lens of eternity. A powerful example of this can be seen in the life of a man who lost his business, his health, and nearly all his hope. He had spent decades building a company only to watch it crumble overnight due to circumstances beyond his control. At the same time, a sudden illness left him weak and unable to do the things he once loved. Friends began to distance themselves, and he found himself battling loneliness along with financial pressure. For months, he stared at the ruins of his life, feeling swallowed by defeat. But one day, he made a simple yet profound shift. Instead of staring at what he had lost, he began to focus on what could never be taken from him: his faith, his eternal hope, and his ability to still make a difference in small ways. He started mentoring young men in his neighborhood, teaching them lessons about perseverance and integrity. He volunteered at a local shelter, offering encouragement to those facing struggles even greater than his own. Over time, his health stabilized, and though his business was gone, he discovered a joy he had never known before. By keeping his eyes heavenward, he realized his story wasn't over. It had only taken a new direction. This is what happens when you lift your vision above the storm. You stop sinking and start standing. You no longer see yourself as a victim of circumstances, but as someone anchored in a reality that storms cannot shake. The difficulties don't disappear, but their power to destroy your spirit does. Every trial becomes temporary when compared to eternity, and every pain becomes purposeful when viewed through heaven's lens. Keeping your vision heavenward means reminding yourself daily that this moment is not the whole story, and that the best chapters of your life are not written by the storm, but by the one who is greater than the storm. One of the most powerful truths we can embrace is that eternity is not some distant idea disconnected from our daily lives. It is the reality that should shape how we live every single day. The way we think, the decisions we make, and the priorities we choose reveal whether we are living for temporary gratification or for something that will last forever. Many people live as though this life is all there is, pouring their energy into chasing success, comfort, or recognition. But those pursuits alone never satisfy. When eternity becomes our lens, everything changes. We no longer make choices based on what feels good in the moment, but on what will matter in the long run. Living with eternity in mind reshapes how we deal with relationships. Instead of holding grudges or letting pride drive us, we become quicker to forgive because we realize grudges don't last, but love does. Eternity reminds us that the people in our lives are more valuable than the arguments that divide us. It also changes how we approach opportunities. Instead of asking only, "What will this do for me now?" we start asking, "What impact will this have beyond me?" That shift in perspective frees us from the pressure to live for applause or temporary gains and empowers us to live with purpose, knowing that every small act of faithfulness has lasting significance. The truth is that living with eternity in mind requires courage. It is often easier to compromise for quick results, to take the shortcut rather than the long path, or to choose temporary pleasure over lasting fulfillment. But when eternity shapes your decisions, you realize that what feels costly now is nothing compared to the reward that lies ahead. It changes how you use your time, because suddenly each day is not something to waste, but something to steward. It changes how you use your resources, because instead of spending everything on yourself, you see opportunities to invest in people, in service, and in causes that carry eternal value. And it changes how you view difficulties, because even trials look different when you know they are producing something in you that outlasts the pain. A beautiful example of this can be seen in the life of a young student named Daniel. He was brilliant, talented, and had a promising future ahead of him. At school, many of his peers compromised their integrity to gain quick success, cheating on exams, bending rules, and cutting corners to get ahead. The pressure to join them was enormous because it seemed like the only way to succeed. But Daniel chose to let eternity shape his decisions. He refused to compromise his integrity, even when it meant facing ridicule and slower progress. Instead, he studied diligently, remained honest, and treated others with respect. In the short term, it looked like he was behind while others raced ahead. But over time, something remarkable happened. His character earned him the trust of his teachers, his peers, and eventually the leaders in his community. Years later, while many of those who took shortcuts had stumbled, Daniel's reputation and faithfulness opened doors for him that no temporary compromise could have secured. His life became a testimony of how integrity, faith, and eternal values always outlast temporary wins. This is the power of letting eternity shape your daily choices. It might not make you the most popular in the moment. It might not always feel easy, and it might even cost you something now. But in the end, you gain far more than you lose. Every act of honesty, every choice of love, every sacrifice for the sake of something greater builds a foundation that lasts forever. Life is short, but eternity is long. And when you live with eternity in mind, your daily choices become investments in something that no storm, no failure, and no time can ever take away. What you consistently focus on will eventually shape the person you become. The human heart and mind are like soil, and whatever you feed them with, whatever you fix your gaze upon, is the seed that will grow in your life. If you spend your days staring at negativity, failures, and fleeting pleasures, then your life will naturally begin to reflect those things. If, however, you focus on what is eternal, pure, and purposeful, you will grow into someone strong, steady, and unshakable. Your eyes determine your direction, and your direction determines your destiny. This is why the things you allow to capture your attention are not harmless. They are forming your character and molding your future. Every day we are surrounded by countless things competing for our focus. Social media, entertainment, material possessions, worries, and even people's opinions are constantly shouting for our attention. If we let our eyes remain fixed on these temporary things, they begin to consume our thoughts and influence our decisions. Soon we find ourselves chasing after what doesn't satisfy, comparing ourselves to others, or living in constant worry. The outcome is that we start becoming shaped by what we look at, whether or not we realize it. A person who constantly stares at fear will become fearful. A person who constantly stares at failure will begin to live in defeat. A person who constantly stares at the shallow pleasures of life will find themselves shallow in character. The eyes are powerful because they are the gateway to the heart, and the heart determines the course of life. On the other hand, when you fix your eyes on what lasts forever, on faith, on truth, on hope, on values that cannot fade, you grow stronger every day. You may still face storms, but your perspective is different. Your gaze is not glued to the problems in front of you, but lifted towards something greater, something eternal. This gives you clarity and focus, and it fuels your faith to keep moving forward, even when the path is difficult. By directing your eyes to what is eternal, you are training your heart to follow the right path. And over time, you become a person of stability, character, and resilience. Consider the story of an athlete preparing for a marathon. Every day, he has a choice. He can fix his eyes on distractions like comfort, laziness, or unhealthy habits, or he can fix his eyes on the goal of finishing the race strong. The more he focuses on short-term comfort, the weaker his body becomes and the less prepared he is for the race. But if he chooses to keep his eyes on the prize, every choice he makes reflects that focus. He wakes up early to train, eats food that fuels his body, and pushes through the pain of practice because his eyes are set on something bigger than the moment. By the time the day of the marathon arrives, he is not only ready, but he has also become stronger and more disciplined because of where he fixed his eyes. His body and his character have been shaped by his focus. Life works in the same way. Whatever you look at, you move toward. Your focus is like a magnet pulling you in its direction. If your eyes are always fixed on what is temporary, you'll waste your energy chasing things that disappear. But if your eyes are fixed on what is eternal, your faith grows, your purpose deepens, and your life becomes a testimony of stability in a world that is constantly shifting. The simple truth is this: your focus will shape your future. So be intentional about where you set your gaze, because what you look at will shape who you become. So here's the bottom line. Stop giving your best energy to things that won't even be here tomorrow. Stop letting temporary worries steal eternal joy. Stop fixing your gaze on things that crumble. Instead, fix your eyes on what is unshakable, unchanging, and everlasting. And let me close with this. When your eyes are fixed on forever, you will live differently today. You'll walk with confidence. You'll endure trials with hope. And you'll leave a legacy that outlives you. Because while everything around you may fade, what you build with eternity in mind will stand forever. So I challenge you, shift your focus, lift your vision, fix your eyes on what will last forever, and watch how your whole life changes when you stop chasing shadows and start walking in the light.
Thank you for joining us on this spiritual journey. If this message touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more reflections that nourish the soul. Your presence here means so much. Come back soon. And let's continue to explore faith and meaning together.
Of what truly.
Thank you for joining us on this spiritual journey. If this message touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more reflections that nourish the soul. Your presence here means so much. Come back soon. And let's continue to explore faith and meaning together.
Lasts.